The quarantine hair is coming in well. If I keep this up, I don't know if I like it by the end. Maybe I'll just keep it like this. I've never really gone full-fledged growing out my hair since 2005, when I was like 10. So maybe I'll go for round 2 and actually know how to do it up correctly this time, because my hair doesn't really grow long. It more just grows out. Like, you can see pictures of my dad's family from like the 70s, 80s, and they would grow their hair out, but it would always just kind of go like crazy like that. Not really actual long hair. So I always avoided growing my hair out, but maybe I can actually make it work this time with the expertise on hair and how to do it correctly. People seem to be liking the videos where I just talk about some movies that are in my collection, so like I said at the end of the last video, I think today I'm going to talk about my Steven Spielberg collection, which, yes, all the titles are currently upside down because I'm going in order of his filmography, and that's just how I took them off the shelf, as you can see. So let's get into it. The first film I own, of course, is Duel, which was a TV movie originally, but it was released as a feature film, and they actually did give it a fancy Blu-ray release. And in the last couple of years, this has started to gain a bigger fan base. A lot of people think Steven Spielberg had it from the beginning. A lot of people actually consider this to be their favorite Spielberg film. I don't own copies of his other work that came out before this, and he also did some episodes of Columbo, which I also don't own, but his first movie, yeah, it was very good. The Sugarland Express, I actually think this is a bit underrated. I dig this movie. It's not the same kind of movie that Duel was, and it's probably not as good as some of his other work, but for being technically the first theatrical film that he made, I actually think there's a lot to appreciate in this movie. It doesn't have that same kind of sentimentality value that his other movies have. You can totally tell he's like a first-time filmmaker in that he's trying to be a little more risky with the story in a way. It doesn't completely play out the way I think they wanted it to play out, but it's still impressive, especially if you want to see some early Spielberg stuff. I think some people might be surprised that this even was a Spielberg film. Jaws, one of the greatest movies ever made, obviously, still holds up. It's amazing that this was the highest grossing movie at the time, because I don't really know what it was about this movie that made it the highest grossing movie. It's a great movie, but it's just interesting that this is the one all the audiences were going for back in 1975, and I'd like to see or read about more of the details of that as to why everybody came out for this movie, you know, compared to the other movies that were released at that time, and why this one was climbing up the ranks as the highest grossing movie. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So this is the release that was done in 2007, very early Blu-ray days, and this is a nice set. Comes with like the extra discs and everything. One of the few movies that was not made by Universal. This one's by Columbia. It has been released since this edition. This is the 30th anniversary edition, and there is a 40th anniversary edition that I believe has more special features. I haven't gotten to it yet. What I really like about this set, though, is besides a really cool booklet that comes with it, there's I can get to it. There's an instruction manual, and this is amazing. And this instruction manual gives you the comparison for every single different version of the movie. You know, besides having a really cool poster right there, there's like a cheat sheet for all the different versions of the movie. So I really like that, and honestly, I wish more editions of movies, because like this version has, I think, 3 different copies of the movie. One that was done for the original release, and I think there was a different cut done right after the movie came out, and then I believe the third cut, which was done for the 20th anniversary edition, which and I don't remember because I've only ever seen the original version of the movie, and that's the only one that really is publicly released nowadays. That was the one that they showed in theaters for the 40th anniversary, the one that I saw in theaters. But there is a version of the movie where you actually see the aliens on the ship, and I've never seen that version, but that's the one that is kind of controversial. But it's part of this set, which I like. Release every version of a movie on one set, and I don't know what's on the 40th anniversary set, but I'll get to it someday. 1941, which this is a movie that a lot of people don't really seem to like, but it's getting the cult following in the last couple of years, and this was considered Spielberg's first flop. And there was a theatrical version and there was the extended version. The one that Spielberg preferred was the extended, but they asked him to make a bunch of cuts because, especially for a comedy, it was running a bit long. Indiana Jones Complete Collection, which some of the movies here will be going out of order because he made the original in 81, which has retroactively been retitled Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I prefer the original title. At least they didn't change it within the film itself. The 1984 Temple of Doom, 1989 The Last Crusade, and the 2008 everyone hates The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which I still kind of like this movie. It's not as good as the other ones. I actually, it's kind of a contention between this and Temple of Doom for which one I like the least. Both of them are not the ones that I typically go for. Last Crusade's good, but I think the original film, to me, is still the best Steven Spielberg film ever made. This is a good set, obviously. It has pretty much everything you're going to want out of an Indiana Jones collection with special features and such. I believe the 2008 release of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, had an extra disc, and not all the special features are on this set. I don't think everything was ported over, so I'm interested to get that extra disc someday. E.T., which this is the 25th anniversary edition, I believe, or no, this is the 30th anniversary, and then there was the 35th anniversary edition, which was the 4K release, and from what I've read, there's not new special features, so I'm not worried about getting it, but this only has the original cut of the film. It does not have the 2002 changes at all, and that's because Spielberg preferred that they would just release the 82 version. He said, I'd rather have both cuts or just the original cut, and they only went for the original cut. I don't know why they didn't throw the 2002 in there as a bonus. Twilight Zone, the movie, which he only directed one section of this, but I still consider it one of his films. You know, this movie's kind of controversial now just for the production and, you know, what happened with the John Landis bit. I doubt they'll ever do a making of for that movie just because it's so controversial. Unfortunately, it kind of overshadowed the rest of the movie, which has other good bits to it, so I don't know. The Color Purple. For a short time, he was working with Warner Brothers and had wasn't doing as much with Universal. So the films that were released through Warner Brothers, they've done really good sets of, and they both came in digibooks because there was The Color Purple. And then he also did Empire of Dreams, that's the Star Wars doc, Empire of the Sun, which also came with a digibook. So Warner Brothers is treating his films very nicely because they're like, we got Spielberg, we gotta treat these films like classics, and Color Purple is considered a classic. I don't know if Empire of the Sun really has as much notoriety as some of his other work, but because it's one of the few films made with Warner Brothers, of course they're gonna give it this really nice set. I wish every one of his movies would get a set like that, but you know. Always, released in 1989, this was like the first time Spielberg released two movies in one year. This came out the same year as The Last Crusade. I think a lot of people kind of forget about this one, and when you look at lists for best Spielberg films, this is often near the bottom of the list. This has gained a cult following, especially for Robin Williams himself, and I hadn't really watched the movie as a kid. I remember bits and pieces of it, but I rewatched it when I've been older, and production value is great. Robin Williams is in it, and he's great, and there's a lot to like about this movie. My only issue really is that it's really long. And you'll kind of see that with a lot of Spielberg movies. A lot of his movies are just kind of long and could use a little trimming here and there. I mean, almost every one of his movies is over 2 hours. A lot of them hit 2.5 hours. Like, Hook is nearly 2.5 hours, and for a kid's fantasy film, I don't think it needs to be that long, especially when watching it. There's a lot that probably could be cut. Jurassic Park, this is the set that was released before, I think it was in 2012, and it was released before Jurassic World came out. This comes with all three films, including the two that Spielberg did. It is not the 3D version. There is another set that has Jurassic Park with the 3D disc, but I don't have a 3D TV, and I could really care less about watching Jurassic Park in 3D. Of course, the first movie's a classic, and The Lost World is it's actually my least favorite Spielberg film, if you ask me. I just very much I get so bored of that movie, and I've tried multiple times, and I always start falling asleep towards the end because it's amazing how boring that movie is. But it has its fans. Schindler's List. I actually put this movie off for many years because I just wasn't prepared to be depressed. But, you know, finally watched it, and of course it's great. This is a great set, too. They really gave a lot of dedication to the original film. It's got some great special features to it and all, and a lot of people consider it to be one of his best films, and they're not wrong. This is obviously a great movie. Amistad, which this was another point where Spielberg released 2 movies in 1 year. The big action film, the big blockbuster, I guess, and then released a movie that would win all the Oscars. And tried to do that again with The Lost World, having, you know, the blockbuster accolades, and then to release this that had the Oscar accolades, but both movies ended up not doing as well as his other 2 films that came out 4 years prior, which at this point, that was like the longest break he ever had between movies, which after doing Schindler's List, you can understand why. But he came back swinging with Saving Private Ryan, which came out in '98, just a year after those 2 movies. Like, dude was keeping busy. And of course, this movie's great as well. I don't think I'm a big fan of war films, to be honest, because I've watched a lot of them that people consider, oh, this is the greatest movie ever, and yeah, I like them, but there's not really any war movies that are that high up on my favorite movies ever. And a lot of people kind of have disagreements about this film as well. It hasn't really established a cult following, I guess. Maybe it's just too soon for that. Minority Report, which I gave it a watch, and it's okay, but not nearly as good as I was hoping it would be. Catch Me If You Can, though. This is honestly one of my favorite Spielberg films, and just really entertaining. Terminal, which is, I remember seeing this in theaters and not thinking really much of it, but I was younger at the time, so maybe it's due for a rewatch. War of the Worlds, which I still really like this movie, and I know there's some people who don't like it, but I think it gets a bad rap. I think this is actually a really good disaster movie. Then you got Munich, which, once again, he released 2 movies in 2005, one that was trying to get, you know, the blockbuster attention, and then the other one that was trying to get the Oscar attention. And this did get Oscar attention. It didn't hit the exact same stride that happened in 1993 with Jurassic Park and Schindler's List, and he's never really reached that again. Every time he's getting there when he's released 2 movies in 1 year, but he never has quite gotten to that same level that he did in '93. He's released 2 movies in 1 year a couple times. He did it in '89, '93, '97, did it in 2002, did it in 2005, and then he did it also again in 2011, which we're getting to. Because in 2008 he did Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and then he 2011 came out with Adventures of Tintin, which I finally gave this movie a watch, and I liked this a lot. And then that same year he did War Horse, so was trying to do the same thing, the blockbuster, and the movie getting all the Oscars. Well, I know what you're doing there, Spielberg. So these films were done by DreamWorks and Touchstone, when Touchstone got a deal with DreamWorks to distribute them anyway. And what's nice about these sets is that these came with 2 discs. So when Disney, because Disney owns Touchstone, so they were actually working with DreamWorks technically, started releasing their sets, they actually gave these 2 discs, which was awesome, because I wish every Spielberg set got that, because they deserve all the special features. So this one got a really nice set, and so did Lincoln, which this one was really close to winning Best Picture, and this set also has 2 discs in it, which is really nice. If I can showcase that. Yeah, see? 2 discs as well. So, they were treating Spielberg really nicely over at Touchstone. But by the time Bridge of Spies came out, they stopped doing the 2 discs for everything, which is, maybe they weren't selling as well, which they should have been. Come on, Steven Spielberg. This is really good. This is kind of my argument for when people say, oh, Spielberg's lost his touch. He hasn't really been good since basically the 90s, like early 90s. He hasn't been nearly as good since then. But honestly, I would argue that some of the stuff he did in the 2010s was better than the decade before, or even the 90s, because he released Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan in the 90s. That was about it. Like, there's other good movies there, but technically I would argue that his best decade was maybe the 70s or 80s, which, you know, makes sense because that was his earlier days, but a lot of people, for some reason, thought, you know, the 90s, you know, is when he was last good, and then the 2000s is when he started to fall apart, which he had a lot of misses in the 2000s, or just movies that weren't as good as his other movies. But the 2010s, I was like, he started getting a lot better than his previous decade. And honestly, to me, in retrospect, 2010s was a better decade than the 90s. So he also released, I think, more movies. BFG, which I didn't like too much, but it was cool that he made a Disney film. But then The Post came out, which I really liked this movie as well. This one was not released by Touchstone, but by 20th Century Fox. He still took the DreamWorks banner with him because their deal with Touchstone had ended. But it's funny that he made it with 20th Century Fox because, once again now, Disney owns it. So a lot of these movies are starting to get owned by Disney. And this is a really good movie too. I really like this. So once again, proves that Spielberg had the magic in him. And then the most controversial of all, Ready Player One, which, as you can tell, this was the set that they released day one. This is the Target edition that comes with a bonus disc. Yeah, this actually came with a bonus disc, and one of the rare instances, I think, where Spielberg film got one of those special edition bonus discs. All the other sets pretty much are complete unless in the last couple years there's been a 4K set that has more special features. But unless I missed something, if there's another set out there that had like a bonus disc that I'm missing, because Warhorse and Lincoln had the 2-disc editions, and then some of the other movies, I believe. I don't think I'm missing any other special features, but let me know. Some of these DVD sets might have special features that weren't carried over, so let me know about that too, because I'm trying to make sure I haven't missed like a special feature out there. I really liked Ready Player One. I did. I still do. I thought it was great, and I liked the changes that they made from the book. I think a lot of people were prepared to hate this movie, and I don't think it's fair to go into a movie like that and then somehow you could come out of it with a completely original opinion that's not based on anything, that's not biased. Like, come on, if you're going into a movie and you're like, oh, I don't want to see this, I'm gonna hate it, of course you're gonna hate it. Like, I don't understand unless the movie really, really surprises you. But when you got a movie like this that it's good, but obviously it's not gonna be a world-changing movie, it's not gonna be some like, oh, that was way better than I expected. Like, no, it still has exactly what people were expecting, so I don't know, I think it gets a bad rap. But that is all of my Spielberg films, so unless I missed one, but I don't think I did, leave a comment letting me know if there is anything I'm missing as far as Spielberg special features, or if there's something I'm missing on those 4K sets, because I would only upgrade for that reason. There's a Jaws 4K set coming, and I'm only interested in getting it if it has more special features. But yeah, leave a comment to let me know what you think of this video. Like it, use that bell icon because that is super helpful to know when new videos are coming out. And let me know what you want to see next. Someone mentioned they want to see my animated collection, which I definitely would like to do in the future, but that will be a ton of movies to go through. But let me know if there's any other directors you want to see. I have every Tim Burton film, so maybe that'll be the next one. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks to all my Patreon supporters. For only $7, you can get your own monthly movie review. Ask me to review anything I haven't already. There's also other perks like blogs, exclusive videos, and early access. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And thanks so much for watching this video.